Wow, we got the great Gordon Pennington on the show.
What a pleasure.
We did some background work, and you sent me your dossier or your CV.
That's something that I think an intelligence organization probably has on me.
Not sure what you'd call it, but man, you have quite the experience, and I didn't really know you in that capacity. I don't know how long I've known you for. Is it 7 or 8 years?
A little longer, Andrew.
Is
About
it?
a decade now.
Yeah, I was going to say 10.
Time flies when you're having fun on the golf course.
But you were born and raised in Owasso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, I'm still living in my great-grandparents' home. I came back from Zurich, Switzerland when my mother had a stroke. And it was after my mother's stroke that I got to become acquainted with a lot of folks in Michigan that when I'd left earlier in life, left Owasso in the 70s.
Raised as an only child.
Only child of an only child of an only child.
Yeah.
And I have an only child who has an only child. I think I'm the only, to my knowledge anyway, I'm the only guy with a 5-generation vertical genealogical provenance like that.
I was. Our dinner tables were a little different at our house. I'm one of 10, and you know my younger brother Jerome very well, but at our dinner tables at night, we didn't have technically assigned seating, but we basically sat in the same sort of place almost all the time.
Was there a social ascendancy or order to that?
Well,
Was that just...
it's funny because Jerome sat at the end of the table in the one spot, and next to my older brother Joe, and then I sat next to my sister Mary, and Jeff sat sort of down, and my sister Ellen sat at the end closest to my mom. Of course, she was the youngest, but you didn't think about it at the time, but everybody, just familiarity just kind of sat. My dad always sat at the end of the table next to my mom, and we had bench seats. But as an only child, you're showing up. What kind of upbringing was that like?
At one time, my parents divorced when I was 2. My dad grew up in the Detroit area. My mother grew up in Owasso. Her grandparents had come to Owasso in the 1880s from Ohio to escape a certain kind of cultural and, I would say, nationalistic, in a sense, prejudice, because he was English and she was German, and she came from a German-speaking farm family that had immigrated around the time of the American Civil War, established themselves. This is hard-scrabble stuff, and they had a German church and a German grave. Everything was in Fraktur German topography, and they met in the town of Birmingham, Ohio. He was the shopkeeper's son, and she was a fetching young lass, and somehow they communicated. She learned enough English, and I think she probably learned more English than he did German. But I know they spoke German and English in that household, even within my hearing at one time.
Yeah, you could see how that could be a problem.
But I felt really, by the time my parents divorced in the late 50s, I felt really like an outsider because the divorce rates were so low. And here I am, my parents divorced, my father moved to Switzerland. And having grown up in Detroit, his father died of multiple sclerosis when his father was 6. And he was my dad's kind of an elusive and distant hero of sorts. So when he was gone, I think my dad really had to find himself in a new way. I would ask my dad, for example, what are your fondest memories with your father, there's a whole backstory there. Right. He'd gone to Swiss boarding schools before World War I. And a little bit about the family background there. My great-grandparents had become involved with John D. Rockefeller's enterprises in Cleveland. They were shipbuilders in the 1880s and 1890s, and so they had some resources. They had a home in Paris and sent my great-grandfather to Swiss boarding school. When he came back, the night he was to be reunited with his father, he'd gotten really involved with the late gold rush, went to Nome, Alaska, told his wife, send ships up here to ship all kinds of things, including, I suppose, some gold. But the food was terrible. One funny story is he cabled my great grandmother and said, buy a restaurant in Paris, everything, brick by stone by board, all all the dishware and the chefs and ship them to Nome, Alaska.
Yeah.
And she did. He said, the food is awful here. We need something better. Long story short, he became mayor of Nome, Alaska. I came back to Chicago to be reunited with my grandfather when he came back by steamship and then rail to Chicago. And I think he'd gotten drunk the night before, and he was banging on the door with a skeleton key of one of the hotel rooms. And the person in that hotel room shot through the door thinking this was a break-in.
Wow.
And my great-grandfather was killed right there, Charles Pennington.
Yeah.
So that was a big disappointment. I think it affected my grandfather in many ways. I can't tell because I never met him. He died before I was able to meet him.
But your father, still alive.
My dad's 100. He had his 100th birthday on May 29th.
And he leaves you at a young age at 2.
Never see him again until I'm in college. And he would call me every year and basically interrogate me.
And you're raised in a household with your mother.
Me, my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandfather. That was my nuclear family. Very different than your table.
In Owasso, which would be probably considered a conservative town.
Historically, Shiawassee County is one of those 19 sort of bellwether counties that would kind of the election outcomes would be predictable. But since World War II on the...
You weren't into athletics or sports particularly.
I was... I don't think I was athletically gifted. I liked baseball. I liked soccer. There wasn't a soccer team there, though, at that time. But I'd been exposed to things. My grandmother had taken us to England and Europe in the summers going back in the 60s. So I saw things a lot of my peers and friends there hadn't seen.
You're not playing organized sports, really.
I was on the swim team. I was on the Owasso High School swim team. I really enjoyed everything except the 6 a.m. practice start times.
Right.
As a teenage boy.
Academically, how are you doing?
I was bright and curious, but not academically, I think, disciplined.
Right.
I think I would have been better in a specialized program curated for reading. And so I was bored. I was completely bored.
In Shiawassee, although a pretty typical rural, high school upbringing, right? I mean, it's not.
Well, it was a Class A school, and we had an industrial base there historically from the 1920s, even before the 20s. Owasso had the highest per capita net worth of any town its size in Michigan. I'm told even in the United States.
Maybe because of Bill Mitchell back then.
Partly, and I think they invested in General Motors in Flint, Michigan. So I know my great-grandfather invested in General Motors, thought they're not going to make it. So he cashed out and got a car instead, one of the first cars in Owasso.
And academically, how do you do in high school?
Okay. I mean, I was I'd get a few 4 points, but I was mainly an average student. I'd just struggle. I wasn't that motivated. I was very interested. I was reading in 6th grade. I read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, William Scher. I mean, things that my mother thought were odd.
Right.
I was reading Tolkien. I was reading English literature. I became interested in Shakespeare. But I need a little more proctoring and curatorial mentoring.
And growing up in the 70s, that's kind of got a stigma associated with it, right? It was sort of the...
I suppose every
counterculture, right?
Go back to the 60s. I was watching my friends' older brothers experiment with drugs, resist the Vietnam War. I would skip school in high school and drive down to Ann Arbor and spend time on Hill Street at the headquarters of the Rainbow People's Party and met John Sinclair and all these characters who were, calling for some kind of new order in society. And I thought, well, what does that look like? I wasn't getting involved with the protests themselves, but I was around it. And the foment of that was serious because my number was going to come up in the very year I graduated. They ended the draft. And you think about the implications of people that were seen as really embarrassing to their families if they weren't going to go and serve their country. But serve what? Exactly what purpose was being conducted in Vietnam? And was it reasonable? And I was listening to both sides of these debates and around a lot of people. Of course, the Ann Arbor Hash Bash and all the things that were going. Ann Arbor was the center of all kinds of really extraordinary foment of ideological conflict.
And you apply and get into Michigan?
No, I was a third-generation legacy student, and that's my grandmother went there. She went to Oberlin College, the first college, as you know, to admit women and
Right.
Negroes, as they preferred to be distinguished at that time. Extraordinary school, led by some very, very interesting influences at that time. And Oberlin had changed, but my grandmother had those experiences and then went to Michigan and got a graduate degree in 1923. They called it a special degree for women because what was a woman going to do with a master's degree?
Right.
But she then went on to become the first woman to direct social work and services for the city of Detroit.
But you graduate from high school.
Graduated from high school, was really not motivated. I wanted to go to Ann Arbor for the hash bash, so I was going to go to Michigan, and my mother said, "You're not academically motivated. You should go somewhere where you can kind of find." I probably needed a gap year, and I ended up going to Northwestern Michigan in Traverse City, which I loved. Traverse, I couldn't have been happier than being in Traverse City. At that time.
and you know, it's a great place to be, and on the water, and you know, it's sunny there, and
sometimes
I mean, more
long
so,
winters,
more so than here.
Winters in the late 70s in Traverse City were predictably extraordinary levels of snowfall and very, very consistent. It was a much smaller, more accessible town.
Lack of a small airport and not as much transient.
Really, in many ways, nothing like it's become now. I think there was a very, very limited lack of foresight in terms of urban planning there too.
And how long do you spend at Northwestern?
I was there. I graduated, went up to Traverse City, and I was there. I took about 4 years there, and then I met my then wife, Lynn Boyer.
Right.
She had grown up in Detroit. Her father was a director of the Ford Motor Company, and she'd gone to Principia, a Christian Science boarding school. And then her father was assigned to run all the design program for Asia out of Australia. And she went with her parents. They still had a home in Detroit, and they had a vacation home in Leelanau County. So she had some experiences that led her to. She got married and divorced. Went to an Argentine playboy when she was 18.
Wow.
And then ended up meeting her dad, introduced her to the McLaren brothers, who were building racing engines at that time. They said, "You should go on the Grand Prix circuit with us." She did, and ended up with the principal driver for Ferrari, and a long backstory. Things didn't work out the way she might have planned. She's still very young. She's like 20.
Eventually, she comes to Traverse City, and that's how you meet.
She comes back from Europe through a very circuitous route, which led to New York and then Israel. And she was really despondent, and a Franciscan monk encountered her in the old city of David in Jerusalem. And she had a spiritual healing and an awakening that led her back to Michigan. And we met there while I had the same kind of experience. I had been raised in the Episcopal Church, smells and bells, as some say. And out of rote tradition, I thought there's something here to life. I respect the tradition. I thought there's something really interesting in Cranmer's liturgy, and I thought the liturgical experience to spirituality was plausible. But I was also smoking dope and had one of my most transcendent spiritual experiences, hallucinogenically induced by LSD.
Wow.
And I'm not advocating any of this, by the way.
But it's part of your story.
It's part of my story.
And it's something you can find on the internet about you. Somebody pulled it up.
Yeah, I've shared my story a few times.
Right.
But hoping that it'll help somebody else. But, I think it takes time to find yourself.
And how old are you when you meet Lynn?
I'm 21.
And
21 on 21.
And no college degree at that point?
Studying in Traverse City. And then we married in Traverse City.
How are you getting by? Like, how are you paying rent? And
I worked. I usually worked 2 jobs all the way through school.
Like, where are you working?
I worked at a bookstore, which was a mistake because I spent most of my earnings on books. And then I was driving a school bus part-time.
In Traverse City?
Yeah. And then I was taking on some part-time construction work in the summer.
And go into a
full-time construction work, but part-time other times.
And a community college, go into a school at a community college.
Northwestern Michigan.
Which you can, community college, even today, you can work and afford your own tuition.
Oh, it was far more reasonable then.
Right. Probably something like $10 a credit hour, $20.
Well, maybe a little more than that, but Not much.
much.
Extraordinary.
In the early
By
80s,
comparison.
in the early 80s, Michigan State was about $68 to $70 a credit hour.
Yeah.
So a community college
This is earlier than that.
must have been
Yeah,
significantly
affordable.
yes.
Affordable education. And very interesting people. But
you
in the midst of that,
You get married at a relatively young age, although 23, 24, 22 back then was not young to be married. A lot of your friends and probably high school peers were getting married about that age
it was a
or earlier.
different set of stats and demographics, and wasn't that unusual. But I definitely look back and think about my lack of certain experience and my immaturity and not having had a father at home at all and not having met my father until I was a freshman in college. So there were a lot of things missing in my scope of understanding myself and the needs of another person.
But you decide then to move to
Los Angeles.
Yeah. And what do you do out there?
We'd both had a real spiritual awakening. We thought, well, this is what we want to understand better about ourselves and our life and calling and destiny. So I went out there and I wanted to study with a guy named Walter Martin and Dr. John Warwick Montgomery, a very famous Lutheran scholar and theologian and
Study
lawyer.
what, though?
I wanted to study theology. I'd been exposed to religion and but I really didn't feel like, other than the catechism that I experienced in the Episcopal Church, which was useful. I mean, I knew the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and I knew a creedal theology, but I didn't really have a certain orthopraxy to say, how do I live this out? How do you follow Jesus?
Right.
I really just it was a bit mystical to me.
And even in this is this the late 70s then?
Yeah, late 70s.
And married?
Yeah, we're married, and we come back to Michigan in 1980.
And how do you survive in LA? Are you
working jobs?
Like what kind of job?
The same things I'd done before, construction basically. And Lynn was a very talented artist who had gone to the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology to study graphic design. We both had a real sense of the power of communication and design, so we'd done some of that in Traverse City. And then we continued to find opportunities, and we really kind of set up shop. She went to work for a firm. I was going to school, and then also working again,
and
a couple of jobs.
Graphic design back in the late 70s is not what it is today. I mean, there's no computers you're just, it's mostly
the advent of the Mac and the design implementation abilities of computers were really just coming out in the 80s.
She's really just putting pen to paper, right?
Exactly.
And
old school
drawing.
Topography, typesetting, and really, really great skills that underlie a real understanding of leading and kerning and how graphic design and topography especially works today.
And you're out at LA for a while, and then you come back to Traverse City.
We had always wanted to move back to Michigan. We loved Traverse City, and we came back there. And
how long before you have your firstborn? First and all?
5 years.
So what year is that?
85.
85.
Yeah, Amanda was born in.
She's 40 now. Then.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, she was
right.
born in February of 85. And we're in Traverse City. We're loving life, but I'm still trying to reach more and do more. We set up shop. We
still significantly involved with your studies?
No, in a way. Then Dr. Montgomery had asked me to come to Strasbourg to study law. And so they had an international human rights law program, which was one of the best in the world. But I could only, while I'm married and living in Traverse City, I'm working as well for a church, a non-denominational church where I'd had some of my earliest spiritual growth experiences. It wasn't Episcopal, but we got married in the Episcopal Church in Traverse City. Mm-hmm. So we're back in Traverse City. We set up shop to help with branding and marketing communications. And Lynn's
for the church?
No, for all kinds of clients.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
for the church too. But now Macs come on the scene. It changes everything.
Yeah.
The possibilities are extraordinary. This was before the internet.
I mean, Macs were available, but they weren't necessarily, on the scene in the mid 80s. The idea that you might even have a computer was kind of...
Well, they were starting to appear, and graphic designers were really just eagerly awaiting this kind of capability.
But you're doing your marketing stuff back in Traverse City.
Yeah, and loving it. Watching Traverse City begin to grow and change. I think
how do
more
you
in the
sell
80s
yourself as a marketing person with you don't have a degree in marketing, you're not from a business school, you didn't study, you studied theology in LA and right? What is your selling point to get is it your wife who's a graphic artist?
It's a great question. Communications had always been a desire, a theme, a motivation in my life, and it was really pretty much door to door presenting a portfolio of ideas and the capacity to help people think through their needs, their communication needs, which were pretty unsophisticated at that time compared to what people are exposed to and how they're exposed to the stream and speed of ideas today.
Well, what kind of work are you doing then in that regard?
Helping small companies refine their brands, their communication, helping them. Again, this is pre-internet, so we're not working on websites. We're working on
door to door where you're calling on people, or is it just sort of word of mouth?
Word of mouth. Basically, friends and networks.
Local businesses in Traverse City?
And doing excellent work. And a lot of referrals, really hardly even having to look for work. People were looking for excellent designers there. And there was a design community in Traverse City at that time.
And so you don't go to study law, or you do?
I do in the summers at Strasbourg. But at that time, that was putting a strain on the marriage, and now we have a baby. So it's very difficult to juggle all that.
You're actually in law school.
Yeah.
In Strasbourg.
But coming back, only able to do that in the summers, so very difficult. And again, you don't have the internet, so you can't online learning.
Right. And how many semesters did you attend?
Just two summer programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the stress on the marriage is more than the marriage can handle at some point.
Mainly just not having the patience to wait for certain things, just trying to do it all at the same time.
Right.
And realizing that I wasn't providing the presence and support that I needed to. And that just strained the marriage in ways that I should have seen coming. It was really, I think the burden of responsibility for that being so strained was on me. She was a very patient, supportive wife and a wonderful person, very talented, skilled, but we couldn't spin all those plates at the same time.
And you get divorced when?
87.
87.
And that was a low point in my whole life. I mean, I don't envy anybody.
It's stressful. It's up there on the top stressors for most people is going through a divorce. And
I think it has to be if there's real affection. And it wasn't like we were in this acrimonious, bitter relationship. It was failing. I was failing to be a husband and to be there for her in ways. There was no betrayals or cheating. There was nothing like that. There was just like an emotional distance.
And then you moved to New York?
I moved to New York, dead broke. I'm at the bottom. I just feel like I don't even know where to turn next. And my dad's younger. This is 87.
87, so separating.
At the end of 87.
Right.
Thanksgiving Day, the day before Thanksgiving, I remember crossing the George Washington Bridge in my little vehicle with whatever goods and chattels I had left.
Yeah, can you things like that stick in your mind, right?
They do.
When you're at the top and when you're at the bottom, they kind of remind you. And you probably thought about, what the hell am I doing with, no money, no savings, moving to New York, right?
It was like one day at a time, Andrew.
Right. But sometimes one day at a time means the status quo, right? Wherever, stay in Traverse City and do what you know. But you decided to get in your car and drive to New York.
I had to pivot. I had to find something, and I didn't know what I would find. Except
Did you have a job waiting for you?
No, nothing. I had a family. My dad's younger brother, Malcolm Whittier Pennington, he very graciously, he and his wife Jeannie invited me to stay in their apartment while I found myself somehow, and that was a journey.
Where was that?
Upper West Side of Manhattan.
So
they'd been there for a long time.
Not a bad offer, right?
No, very, very generous offer.
Yeah. And so you get there and
well, you better find a job. And eventually my uncle said, you need to get a nice suit, carry a briefcase, take notes at my meetings, follow me. And it basically
what did he do?
He was a marketing consultant to IBM. He'd been at IBM and a company called Golightly and Lightly. He was a Cornell he went to Cranbrook, Cornell, and Columbia All C's.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy, Columbia Business School. And he met his beautiful wife, Jeannie, and she wanted to go into the fashion industry, but she went and did a joint Columbia JD MBA. And
so pretty powerful couple education-wise, and probably sort of a alpha mentality, both of them.
Smart and motivated, yeah. And so I was around that environment.
And your uncle says, "Come with me," and is he paying you at all?
No. I was very fortunate just to have a place. I mean,
and did you go out and get a suit and a notepad and
a really, really fancy briefcase above my pay grade, Andrew?
Right. Well, I know you love briefcases, right?
I do. I think it's a fashion accoutrement that has some utility.
Yeah.
So
you go. So you know, where do you go from there?
It was like an executive MBA. I got to meet some of the most interesting people. He was advisor to the CEO of American Airlines, was an old buddy of his, and I just met one interesting person. I was in one interesting boardroom after another, and I saw the way people at the top of that hierarchy of decision-making and corporate responsibility interacted, and I just sat there in silence and took notes, and then he would debrief me and say, what did you see there? What was the interchange? What was the expectation? What transactionally took place? What was the temperament and mood in the room? And what were the essential points there? What are the deliverables, and what's next, and what's the path forward strategically, and do they see their problems and where the minefields are?
And how did you do in that report to your uncle? Were you?
He was tough and kind at the same time. It was dazzling for me, Andrew, because he expected so much from me, but he was also very, very generous.
Do you have any memories of those first meetings and what was being discussed? You know, late 80s.
I'd never seen anything like it. And when you think about what was going on, Barbarians at the Gate, KKR, and the foment of all these things that led, late 80s into the 90s.
Late 80s.
Nabisco's.
Well, that would have been just the Reagan, end of the Reagan era. And
that's correct.
George Bush and what was it?
Reagan finished his turn. It was interesting.
The yuppie era, and it was just the BMW, the little BMW was the car, and really, cocaine became sort of the hot drug of choice. I only know that because in the 90s, that was sort of the people who would come and see me, there was marijuana, of course, but then cocaine, the whole movie scene and Scarface and all of that stuff.
It had become very, unfortunately, accessible, and people were. I was around all that, and I saw the icons of material success and how people were looking at. Their ambitions had changed. How much can you make on Wall Street? What's the potential? And of course, this is before tech IPOs in the late 90s, early 2000s. Stunning numbers. But this is where people on Wall Street at that time would say, "What's your walk away number?" I said, "What's that? How much money do you need to walk away?" Well, a lot of guys I was around like 10 million, 20 million. That was a lot of money then. Nobody envisioned walking away with 10 billion.
Making 100,000 was a lot.
That was a number.
Yeah, that was.
And that was very common.
Right.
Everywhere around, and of course, coming from Owasso and then Traverse City, and I just hadn't been around that many people with that much ambition and resources and compensation.
What are the sort of? Do you remember any of the marketing ideas that are being kicked around, or the problems that your uncle and you are sort of talking about?
Yeah, I do. It's very interesting you mentioned that, because the idea of globalism wasn't in currency. It was the idea of international trade. What would it be like to work with a Japanese company? Now, you'll remember in the 80s, the Japanese represented the paragon of business management theory and ideas like, you want to be like a Japanese company. Now, that wasn't ultimately unsustainable, but basically the loyalty, the cradle-to-grave commitment of corporations to the workforce, and the sense of conformity to a certain. You could only do this in Japan, by the way. The culturally xenophobic environment that which we would say today is.
Yeah, that's probably maybe about the era where the Sony was taking on Motorola and maybe Magnavox, and we saw the Datsun and those kind of cars, and taking on General Motors and Ford.
Well, the Walkman. Think of the innovations that Sony introduced, like personal music. Say, for example, a very new idea, other than people that had headphones, but the mobility of personal music was revolutionary. To see people walking around for the first time before social media, before iPhones, before any of this, people had Walkmans with earbuds on, and they were isolated as they ran or jogged or walked or did anything.
With their cassettes, and they're making their own playlists, right?
And making playlists, yeah. That's what a fascinating time when you think back about how technology was driving cultural change. So the idea that you would be less interactive, less conversationally exposed. You could just put headphones on and tune out the world for the first time.
Yeah, for sure.
Think of the implications of that. And this is just a forerunner to what you see. Now you can be in crowded rooms and places, and public places and restaurants and so on, and look around the room, and maybe 80% of the people are distracted and involved, not with the people around. I'm generalizing, I realize.
But there's seems to be a point in time when you realize, because there had to have been a struggle at some point where you say, was this the right decision, you moving to New York? But at some time, you transition to, this is sort of my thing, right?
Something in me came alive, as though I would awaken, Andrew, in the morning and feel like I was on the set of my own life story, like it was a movie. The possibilities, the people I met, it changed my sense of what life can afford you.
And do you eventually decide, I can charge for my own advice?
That took a while. I didn't have any sense of, honestly, I didn't have any sense of deep self-worth, self-regard, self-respect. I just thought life is full of these existential possibilities. But I was still, a lot of times I was so lonely. I would be that guy sitting at the end of a long bar in the late afternoon on the Upper East Side, where someone would see the sunlight streaking through the windows.
Even then,
just having a drink.
To be in New York and to have money to pay for a drink, how did you do that?
Well, I started getting more opportunities. My uncle, I couldn't have had a better mentor. And then I realized how important mentoring is. And I've kept that in mind the rest of my life. There are so many people that need some guidance and direction.
Actually, at what point are you doing a paying job?
Oh, shortly thereafter, I got opportunities to, basically I was doing some pretty demeaning jobs too. I was doing anything I could to supplement incomes. My uncle wasn't paying me. He was giving me a vast amount of rich executive MBA experience, I would describe it today. But I was working all kinds of side hustles. I was working at a shoe store part-time. I worked at a clothing store part-time. I would take and there were a lot of opportunities to work then. The economy was fairly, even though there'd been a market correction in 87 and another one in 89. Monday? There was a Black Monday in 89 for sure. Yeah. And I watched a lot of people lose that. Right about that time, I'd gotten an opportunity to work on Wall Street and to work with big money center banks, advising them on a number of their interactions with their retail customers. And then I got to see the institutional side of Wall Street.
And how does that come about?
Through a social introduction. Just about everything was like, I just would, the phone, I'd meet somebody.
How do you tell people you're qualified to do the job?
I think it would come out in conversation. And they said, I know somebody who needs somebody like you. And I'd go in and have a couple of interviews and find that there was a good fit. People were really, the ambition level to grow companies and be driven by ideas. I think it was one of the most exciting times. You could say that even today, but it's different.
And eventually you start your own company?
Yeah, that was much later. Along the way, I'd gotten the opportunity to really learn a lot on Wall Street. I got to work with a company that served, again, big money center banks, which I had no ambition to work for.
What does that mean, a money center bank?
Well, the biggest banks in the world. The banks at Chase, Manhattan, J.P. Morgan, Citicorp, U.S. Bank.
And what are they paying you to do?
Basically help them with their communications. And there was a lot of communication. So, for example, we worked on global custody. So this is real-time trade reconciliation as people are this is pre-internet. So people are making trades. Let's go back to Japan. And that trade reconciliation has to be done in real time between international date lines and all kinds of considerations. And what does that look like when you are running global custody from one of the larger banks and you have new technologies coming out every 6 months? I would get these documents.
Before really email either. Or texting.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, so the only way they would send it is by regular mail.
Andrew, do you remember fax machines?
Yeah, of course.
And the smell like an electric train transformer?
That was probably late 80s.
It was.
The paper.
It was. Yeah. And these things would be humming all the time. You would hear fax machines just burning. They smelled a lot like what I remember. Do you remember electric trains from your childhood? Maybe you don't, but they had transformers and they had a certain smell. I don't know what it produced, and a kind of an ozone around it, but very interesting. So I was in the midst of these extraordinary changes going on, and they'd give me 60-page documents and say, you got a few days to translate this into 6 pages or 6 paragraphs so that our institutional customers understand what this technology can produce. I was overwhelmed. I was baffled. I had all these questions about what exactly are you describing? So I'm talking to techno geeks at that time who said, oh, this is so exciting. I said, what exactly is exciting about this? Well, at the end of the day, what's the deliverable value to the institutional customer of these big banks? Somebody had to figure that out, how to translate. All they wanted was the bottom line.
That's what you're doing, is simplifying these complex transactions and documents. And
it was overwhelming. It was burdensome. I would even say sometimes it was horrifying. It was like, I'm not even sure I understand what 60 pages.
You must have been able to do it.
You're forced to do it.
Right.
Like a lot of things that help you grow up or change or understand things clearly. As a result of that, I think today I've got a skill set I would never have had today. I can look at complex order of ideas and try to segment them, order them, clarify them, and express them in a way that's creative, that's engaging, that's effective for clients, and I'm still doing it, and I love it.
And from there, you get some of the biggest clients that we all have heard of, right?
Yeah. Just doors start opening because people had need to translate. And we have experiences, we have services, we have something that's identified with our brand historically, but doesn't represent all the things we can and want to do.
One of the first companies that you were with, Tommy
Hilfiger. Yeah, Tommy was a great success story, huge in the 80s.
Well, tell me about your involvement.
Yeah, he came from Elmira, New York, from a big family.
Tell me about your involvement.
Yeah, my involvement was meeting Tommy socially. I had a very attractive girlfriend. We met Tommy at a nightclub. He was out and about town. Everybody knew who he was. He was just this up-and-comer, but he wasn't Ralph Lauren and he wasn't Calvin Klein. He wasn't really quite anybody yet, but he'd made some name value. When would this era have been? This in the late 80s.
Late 80s.
Early 90s. And I liked Tommy. I just thought, what a terrific guy. What an ambitious, visionary guy. He's a few years older than I was, but it was interesting. So I just got to know him socially and encountered him.
And back then, how you're just meeting him just by coincidence at a bar, and then
at a nightclub.
At a nightclub,
yeah.
and then
very swish nightclub.
A week or two later, you see him again at another, because you're not texting him, and you're not, I don't,
or sending him letters, or faxes.
Yeah, you didn't have his email address, and you're not,
it's a totally different world.
Is it just by coincidence that you'd see him again?
Completely.
Yeah, because did you even have his phone number?
No.
Right.
Not everybody even had a mobile phone yet.
Right. And you're
try to picture that today.
So you're just sort of running in the same circles where your paths would overcross, and he obviously liked you.
Yeah.
Right?
I liked him. He called me into his office. He says, look, our brand is stalled. We got off to a start.
Well, okay, but you're skipping over something when you say he called you into his office. Like, how did he?
Yeah, we got together. I saw him. I know exactly where it was. I saw him on Upper 7th Avenue one day, and he said, hey, let's get together. I want to talk to you. I really have to do something at the company. And so we stayed in touch. Somehow, by that time, he gave me his card. Remember, people gave each other business cards.
Right.
He said, call me. And, of course, I did, like the very next day. He says, let's set up a meeting. We come in. I really wasn't sure what he had in mind. I show up in a T-shirt with shorts and on rollerblades with a Walkman.
There you go.
I didn't care. I wasn't trying to impress him.
Sort
I was
of
just trying to be
cliche of that era, right?
totally a cliche that era,
Right.
almost embarrassingly so. But there was a sense of freedom and mobility and all this. When you think about it, it was very, very dated now, but it was interesting. So Tommy had George Lois, the famous George Lois, had created this hangman idea, a billboard on 7th Avenue that said, name the 4 most significant menswear fashion designers in the world today. And it was a hangman, so it was RL, Ralph Lauren, it was CK, Calvin Klein, and it was Perry Ellis. Remember Perry Ellis,
Yeah,
PE?
sure.
And then it was TH. And Lois had ingeniously decided what they needed to do is at bus shelters have a team of people go and fill in the blanks. So they filled in Tommy Hilfiger. And people, of course, assumed very different era of how
Now they put him in the top
suddenly
4,
he
right?
must be in the top 4 because somebody said he is.
Right. That's sort of the Avis thing. We're number 2, right?
Yeah. I'm number 4.
Yeah.
But it was good company to be in. Interesting.
Right.
But the brand have felt stale and old, was using some old black and white. It wasn't right. He said, I feel like you can help me. Would you come along? And I started generating some ideas, and then I presented to the board. And the next thing I know, I'm the director of marketing for the fastest growing fashion company in the world. And that was a very, very heady atmosphere. Now
In New
I'm
York
there,
City.
in Midtown Manhattan, surrounded by extraordinary people,
And
the
where are
top
you living at
models,
the
and
time?
Upper West Side. I'd gotten an apartment on there. I love the Upper West Side because I like being close to Central Park. And
Right.
I loved the neighborhood. It was a very energetic neighborhood. And it's very in the midst of a lot of change and gentrification. And you had
And how old are you at the time?
well, let's see. I must be 31.
Yeah.
32.
And do you mind talking about your income at the time?
Yeah, no. I went in, my salary negotiation was come up with the highest number that you can think of without laughing. And I did.
And what number
And
was
they
that?
approved it. I don't think I'd want to say.
Was it more than 6 figures?
It was very healthy income. And more than that,
Because back then,
I had a
the idea that if you're 30 and you're making $30,000, that was a sign of success, right?
really?
Yeah, and if you made
I was
double-
making more than that even before.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But you're right. It's all relative to values now. It's like the
Right.
guys on Wall Street saying for $10 million, I
Right.
can walk away from all this. It's just things change, don't they? Of course,
Right.
inflation, relative values, purchasing
you're
power.
single,
I'm single.
don't have a lot of debt, right?
I don't have any money, but I don't have any debt.
Right, and now you got this great job.
Amazing.
And living in New York City would this have been the Bill Clinton era, right?
Yeah.
And working for one of the, it's a cool company.
Very cool.
Right.
Very exciting. And I'm dating models, and of course I have again, to say it clearly, I have no sense of real self-worth or deep self-confidence because I'm a father of a daughter I'm not seeing every day, every week. She comes out and spends time with me in Manhattan on vacations and holidays, and I love her.
Still a
Adore
sense
her.
of failure and loneliness.
Those were competing feelings in the back, at the deepest reaches of my soul. I've walked away from something, because I don't really know what's my worth, and if Wall Street or corporate America comes along and throws a number at you, said, this is what you're worth. Do you believe that, Andrew, or do you think there's got to be something more, something deeper? And I'm in the back of my mind, I still have this sense of spiritual, an instinct that I've failed at. I'm failed at being a follower of Jesus. That's the thing that was the real core of my being, and I'd walked away from that. Now I'm not in a great place. I'm drinking regularly. And I had a young girlfriend who I really loved, but I didn't think she could grow into the future with me. So that ended. It's sad in a way because we were very close. But she was young. She was 10 years younger than I was. And then I'm thinking now I have access. People are inviting me to very A-list. I'm not an A-lister or anything of the sort, but I'm around people.
54
That era was over. But MK and a lot of other nightclubs that were very, very chic and now I'm around that cocaine culture described. I'm even trying things that it's an embarrassment to talk about now, but I was doing crack cocaine occasionally I'm not going down to get this stuff from dealers on the street. I'm getting it from very wealthy friends. I mean, I was shocked at the amount of drug abuse going on at the highest levels. Right. It wasn't Tommy, and I'm not going to implicate anybody. I'm very careful what I say.
Tommy, is he a friend of yours?
Tommy's a great guy. He's absolutely a wonderful person.
You socialize him and socialize with him and go to his.
Tommy could not have been more gracious to me. But what Tommy didn't realize was my inner struggles. And when I thought, why would a model go out with me? Why? Well, partly because I'm organizing and producing fashion shows, and I'm ad campaigns.
And interesting, and you can talk to them, right? And you have a personality.
They're interesting. People are interesting to me. Right. And the next thing I know, I'm exposed to more and more. I told you earlier about just having private moments with some of the most celebrated people,
right?
And movie stars and uber wealthy, David Koch, and people pull me aside. I just have these moments where I really didn't want anything from them. I'm trying to figure out who I am. I'm not cloying after people like some kind of wannabe or.
How long are you with Tommy Hilfiger?
Only a couple of years before they went public, and it was a very challenging time to keep up with. The things that were happening there were happening so fast. Everything in my life was happening so fast. But it opened the doors for me to just work with all kinds of interests. And as I told you earlier, I'd met Johnny Depp and Prince Albert, and I'd gone out with Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter, Margot, and just had these experiences that were a stunning array of people in a social circle. But again, I found that the one common denominator amongst the richest people in the world and the poor was a sense of worth and value. And once you're very celebrated, you're around people that are sort of sycophantic. Who are your real? Probably your friends are the people you can go back years and years who've known you since you were a kid.
Right.
And you had a connection with them, and they weren't impressed with anything else. And
you don't have. At the time, you didn't have a lot of you didn't have any siblings to bounce off of, or give you sort of a centering.
I'm still an only child, with an only child.
Tell me what you do after Tommy Hilfiger.
Started working. The first thing that came along was some friends socially that I knew in the polo set. That's a very rarefied air between the U.S. and England and
actual,
France.
Not Ralph Lauren polo, but the actual polo sport.
I had met Ralph and had a rapport with him, which is interesting. He was actually a very shy person, but very gracious and very interesting, and the whole backstory there. And when I would see Ralph in East Hampton or somewhere, Ralph would take time with me to show me his latest, really interesting cars, and what he was excited about would be something unusual, like how he had personally designed some luggage to go in the boot of a Mercedes Gullwing, let's say, for example. This is a true story. And he was so thrilled. He said, "Look at the fit and little things."
Right.
Ralph really wasn't even impressed with. Ralph was impressed with detail, and a fascinating. We could spend a whole
you get involved
conversation
with the polo, the sport.
So I become the director of media and essentially marketing for the U.S. Polo Association. All the really, these are billionaire polo players who are not generally that good. There's one or two exceptions, but they have a ranking. Are you a high goaler? 10 goalers.
Expensive sport.
It's a very expensive, and you got a string of polo ponies that are the best of the best, and they're all dealing with these Argentine breeders. And then the Argentines are also the best polo players in the world at that time, and generally today, so they'd call them the Argentine assassins.
Right.
So you put them on your team, and then you got a guy who's got a lower ranking. A handful of them were high goalers, but so in the midst of that, I'm just in this social swirl that's taking me all over the world, and I'm not used to the idea that people would go to London for the weekend, or Paris for a party, or Rome, or this kind of, or Moscow. We took a whole plane load of people to Moscow one weekend.
For the weekend.
For a long lost weekend. Believe me, it was one of the most eye-opening events. We were there basically with the Russian oligarchs, the mafia essentially.
Who else would you want to be with?
Well, it was entertaining, that's for sure. I've never seen so much caviar.
At some point, you have another spiritual epiphany?
It took years. I mean, I could give you 10 years of sad stories of epic relational people I'd hurt that I really loved and cared for, but I didn't have the confidence to say, pull the trigger and say, this is a lifelong relationship that I can be there for. I'm ashamed and embarrassed about much of that because I just didn't find myself. And finally I got tired of, I hid all this stuff. I was very careful about it. I wouldn't have said I was a drug addict. I would have certain alcohol or drug patterns of dependency, shall we say. Was I a drug addict sticking a needle in my arm? No, but was I open to receiving any sort of inducements that were alcohol
you
or
weren't
drug
one
fuel?
to say no.
I wasn't one to say no to much.
Right.
But I never stuck a needle in my arm, and I guess there's some faint
Yeah,
faint
there you go.
gratitude in that, or great gratitude, but it was a time of great foolishness. And finally, this comes up to about 97, and I'd had a lot of interesting experience, and I was exhausted by it. I thought, who really...
Still in New York?
Yeah. I was in my apartment in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I remember waking up one morning. A lot of mornings I'd wake up with DTs. I just had too much alcohol. I'd have blood alcohol poisoning in the spin. I wasn't just hungover. I was sick and intoxicated. And I had a friend who was at Harvard Medical School. I mean, it was a lot of interesting people. And he said, "Do you need a shot of vodka and an espresso chaser? Just
to
mitigate it." And I thought that there's nothing healthy in my life here.
Right.
So I finally got on my knees, and I remember feeling pretty low and like I have not resolved any of my deepest issues. I've had a lot of experiences, happy, sad, successes. I've been with some of the richest people in the world on their yachts, on their planes, seen their estancias and palaces. At one point, this is afterward, but I had a chance to have a tea and meet Prince Charles when he was at his home at Highgrove, and been a guest at Windsor Castle, been in places
exclusive,
where I never...
not just rich, but exclusive, right?
And seeing the inherent... I don't think anyone escapes. None of us are going to escape this life, essentially, without going through the confrontation with our mortality. We're going to die.
Right. For sure.
I wasn't ready for that. And how many people ever really live before they die? They're trying to figure it out. We can fill your life with a lot of interesting things. We can stay busy and measure our success. Everybody's looking at how people are dressed or what kind of cars are parked next to them or who knows where they live and where they go.
You get down on your knees.
I get down on my knees and I cry out to God. I don't know where to go next. Help me. Really, really, really in deep humility. And I got up off my knees on that day in my apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and I felt something lift off me. I felt a peace, a quiet, a calm, like all those competing impulses and voices had just fallen aside for a moment. I felt like I was in the center of the eye of a storm all around me, but I felt such profound peace, like I'd come home into some kind of... like a loving embrace held me, and it had always been there for me. I just was in denial.
Right.
And I never went back.
Never?
I got to where I just put all that aside, a lot of the things I was chasing foolishly, and I just found a place of peace and a path that was...
Never
really
drank after that?
Not for years, and then now I can have a couple of drinks. I know my limits.
Right.
I've never gone back to drunkenness at all, drugs at all, nothing.
Didn't do a 12-step process?
No, that's the...
And you had a sort of, a young sort of adolescent imbibe of marijuana, which... And so it wasn't just, a time period in New York. It was sort of a decades of coming to this point, right?
It took a while.
Yeah.
10 years, I think I ran from something I wasn't confident in. I wasn't confident in my sense of being worthy, I suppose, or being...
And your story is a great story, but not too many people can do it in the way... many people struggle with, sort of... sobriety and their journey towards sobriety, but you were able to do it sort of in a moment of grace and humility, right?
I think I was looking for sobriety was a start. It wasn't the finish line for me. It was being reconnected to what I sensed was God's love, God's purpose, a sense of destiny, a sense of calling and direction. How to use your life.
And how does that sort of change? Because it's not like you went to prison. It's not like you got fired from your job. It's not, whether this was a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever, the next day you get up, your phone's ringing, you have clients. How does that change your point of view or your perspective with regard to your business and your clients?
I didn't have the same relentless, peripatetic, nervous ambition to do everything and be something change. There was a peace. I think the Apostle Paul calls it the peace that surpasses understanding. Have no anxiety, says in his letter to the Philippian Christian community in the first century. Have no anxiety about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication. Let your requests, let your needs be known to God.
And does it change your relationship with your friends who are probably still on the same path?
A lot of my friends, I didn't have the same desire. I didn't want to go out every night. I didn't want to go nightclub. Andrew, I think for 10 years, I was probably out 5 or 6 nights a week.
Right.
Sometimes more. It was relentless. And I always felt like there was a need for, maybe I'll find that perfect woman, that perfect romance that will change and bring me peace. And I hadn't found it until that moment, until I prayed and just put it all on the altar.
Are you still able to make the connection socially and engage in your business? Because at some point you start your own business, right?
Yeah, I started Burning Media Group in about 1999, 2000. I was more selective about what I wanted to do and who I wanted to do it with. And
what kind of clients did you have?
I had some great clients that wanted to clarify. Really, education has been something because of my mother and my grandmother. I felt like if I can serve the purpose of giving people opportunities for education, I started going around the world and looking at cultures all over and where there were educational needs. Look at our own country now. We're in an educational crisis.
But with Burning Media, who's calling on Burning Media?
A lot of my old friends. I was still working with some very, very interesting clients and opportunities. Well, I'd done some work with the Four Seasons Hotel Group, and I'd come back to some of the hospitality companies, transportation, travel. But then something interesting happened. I started spending more time in the UK, and I worked with some companies that were doing strategic consulting on the future, basically futurists that were helping corporations plan for what's next. And I thought, you got to be able to think about that and plan for the unforeseen. We're in a time like that right now with AI. People can scarcely consider what's going to happen to the human workforce and the redundancy, and where will robotics and AI supplement things that we're taking for granted now. I promise you, 5 years from now, we'll be sitting here having very different conversations about what labor and work and what those, and how do we communicate that right now? How do we help people prepare? That's a big part of my focus.
But you've consulted with some of the biggest companies in the world, right?
Yeah.
And some of them, including Apple?
Yeah.
Who else?
Years ago, I suggested to Apple that they should go into retail. The people I talked to laughed at me. Said, what would we do in a retail space? Really? Look at them now. You look at the vision that Steve Jobs had. It's
only place in the mall that's absolutely packed and you have a waiting list to get in is the Apple store for the most part, right?
Exactly. And Jobs had a vision for an almost childlike simplicity of access. Just put the products there and let people play. Think about it.
But
who had ever done that
besides
before?
Apple, can you identify some of the...
Oh, yeah. Worked with Coca-Cola on the rebrand relaunch of Fresca, and And British Airways had an upgrade of service experiences, and I got the opportunity to help them think through how to communicate that, going back and forth. People were on Concorde and first class,
Right.
and they called Concorde the time machine. It was a time saving.
Yeah,
It really was.
My dad flew on the Concorde.
And I hope supersonic travel comes back. But
Right.
I'd go to Heathrow, and they had a headquarters there, a place called Speedbird House at Heathrow, and have these really interesting meetings. And how do we help people understand the value of an upgrade experience? Well, the point wasn't the luxury. The point was you arrive, for the business traveler especially, and others, you're going to arrive refreshed. You're going to be more focused.
Right.
You're going to be better at what you do.
More productive.
More productive. And these are the early days before flatbed seats.
Right.
That wasn't, it was just that you could stretch it all was a concept. And then flatbed seats come along, and you have your little individual pods. And now if you go to the Middle East, you go on Qatar or these other airlines that are, extraordinary showers
Right.
in the sky. I mean, but if it does deliver a better person for the purpose, the business purpose, then there's a financial value there's an equation there that makes greater sense than just feeling like you were pampered.
And you developed all those relationships through your social network.
Yeah. Just meeting with people and really listening. I think I've improved considerably in terms of listening to what people say they need and what they really need and helping them interpret that.
At some point, you meet Jan.
Yeah. I come back. My mother had a stroke, so I'm working at the Union Bank of Switzerland. It has a think tank at Wolfsburg, just north of Zurich.
When is this?
This is 2006,
Okay.
2007. We'd also just started something called Charity Water. And while I was in Zurich, Switzerland, while I was at Wolfsburg, I got an email from mutual friends, and I got an email from a guy named Scott Harrison, amazing guy with a fascinating story. And he said, "You got time for lunch? I promise it won't be boring." I write back, "Dude, I'm in a village in Switzerland. If you can find me, I'll buy you lunch."
Right.
So he shows up not many weeks later, tells me his whole story about being a nightclub promoter and getting sideways with some people in New York where he had to get out of New York. And he'd had quite an interesting life, very talented guy, very driven guy. And he ended up on what's called a mercy ship, a hospital ship off the west coast of Africa in Liberia, where he saw such extraordinary human suffering, all related to the fact that these people were not getting access to clean water. So the microbial risks of what they were drinking were causing all kinds of really, really critical health problems. And he said, we could address this by drilling freshwater wells, just alleviate so much human suffering. Probably the greatest, most universally addressable human need in the world today, or certainly one of them. And I said, that's a really interesting idea. And we spent the day together, and I took the train back to Zurich with him. I said, listen, you're an interesting guy. I think it's a great idea, but I don't have time for this right now. So he left. He went back to Liberia in the end. A few weeks later, I just thought about it. It just never left my consciousness. Somehow I thought,
Right.
I got to see this for myself. I didn't want to go there. Andrew, I was in a really good situation in Switzerland, and then I find myself down there. By that time, I was traveling so much, I had 2 passports, and I didn't have the 60-page additional insert that you can get.
Right.
So my passport was full. I get down there with my new passport issued by the State Department, and I'm still thinking I've got space in the old passport. I spend a few days down there with Scott on this mercy ship. I literally got to witness my first surgery. They had pulled the skin flap up off a man's face to open his airway up. And I went in to just look at it and get out of there. I never thought I'd see this, the whole display of all of his cranial features and eye sockets and the orbital. I mean, it was just, I've never seen, I wanted to throw up. And they said, no, we're short-staffed. Stand here and hold the plasma for the whole procedure.
Wow.
I thought, I'm not going to, I almost passed out, but I just thought, this is a miracle. I'm seeing this for a reason. So we get back to the ship, and then we're going to fly up to, I think, Dakar and then Brussels with a stop in Sierra Leone. And people have chickens and God knows what on these flights. And the flights leave when they leave. It's just, there's no real precision to it. We get to Brussels, and this is 2006, and my passport, 2005, I think it's closer to 2005, and I had 2 passports. I had left one with the bursar on the ship, and I had the other passport, but had a discard notification. It wasn't expired. It just it's too full, and it really wasn't. But the Brussels customs agent really gave me a headache, and they put me in handcuffs and took me to a place where you were incarcerated while you're processed for immigration violations or a number of things. So I'm sitting there really
You're
mad.
not a guest until you've been arrested.
I wasn't happy about it. I felt like I was doing this for a good reason. I felt like I was doing it for the Lord. Like, really, seriously, God, you got a weird sense of humor. This is not what I'm trying to do. So while I'm in this incarcerated situation, it's a terrible place, I thought to myself, instead of just, being miserable, I went to the guards and I said, and the facilities were really, really awful. And I thought I could do something constructive here, but what? Give me some cleaning supplies and I'll get on my hands and knees and I'll literally clean the latrines, the bathrooms, the showers. It was horrible. But I honestly felt that that's what the Lord had put on my heart to do. So I'm being observed by all these other people that are incarcerated there for temporary. It's not a prison.
Right.
It's not even a jail. It's a holding center, like a dormitory, a really bad dormitory. And I felt, something compelled me to empty the ashtrays, help them. And the guards looked at me like, everybody thought I was CIA. I show up there, I had pretty nice clothes and new to-me luggage. They're like, this guy's CIA. Don't trust this guy at all.
With the passport that's full, that's right.
So I'm on my hands and knees scrubbing toilets and cleaning. Don't get me wrong. It's not what I want to do. I just felt something. I don't know. God works in mysterious ways, but he just wanted to, again, humble me. Serve people. It's not about you.
Yeah.
And just another life lesson. As I did, a Muslim guy came to me later and says, I've watched you. What is it about you? Why are you doing this? I said, I don't know, but I feel something. I've needed that embrace. I feel God's, in spite of being mad at God, I feel.
Help those that.
Yeah. And when I got out of there, there was an old beat-up paperback Bible there. I told the guards, I said, I'll get out of here in a few days, but you're stuck. In fact, your soul is imprisoned, and you'll never escape. But there's an escape plan here. Did you know that's in this book? Have you ever read it? I gave him a copy of that Bible. I said, take a look. There's a mysterious plan there. You'll want to know about it because it's the only escape route.
You're not going to believe this. We're way over an hour.
I am having such a wonderful conversation with you. Andrew, you're a good interviewer.
We're going to have to come back, right?
I've really enjoyed being with you.
Well, we're not done. I hope you can come back and finish. Thanks. We only got to 2005.
Oh, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. Andrew, appreciate you.